In 2020, the Bureau of Reclamation and the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers decided not to breach 4 dams on the lower Snake River. I'm your Idaho Backroads neighborhood reporter, Steve Dent. But in December, those entities decided they needed to redo the supplemental environmental impact statement. And we wanted to find out what this means for the future of salmon and steelhead and also wheat farming in Idaho. In 2024, more sockeye salmon passed through the lower Granite Dam than any other year since numbers started being recorded at the dam in 1975. The most steelhead returned since 2015, and there were better than average numbers for Chinook salmon.
This year is relatively good. And when I say relatively, what I mean is that it's good in the context of the last 10 years. But if you look in the context of the last 50 years, the last 100 years, it's just a tiny fraction of what used to come back to Idaho.
Several different factors have contributed to an overall decline in the numbers. It's a complex issue, but in recent years, there has been a strong push to remove 4 dams on the lower Snake River.
Salmon and steelhead are what make Idaho, Idaho. So at the economic level, they're a huge driver for rural economies in the state of Idaho. $200 billion a year for anadromous fish guiding. They're a keystone species, so they're supplying nutrients to our inland ecosystems, supporting over 130 other species. And then at a cultural level, they're just vital to Idaho's cultures.
A coalition of Northwest power entities oppose breaching the dams, as does the Port of Lewiston and the Idaho Farm Bureau. Wheat is the 4th largest crop in Idaho, and farmers send their wheat down the river on a barge system.
Idaho produces about 100 million bushels of wheat every year, and about half of our wheat is exported and goes down the Columbia Snake River system to Portland to get exported to mainly Asian markets.
Wheat contributes more than $500 million a year in revenue, and over the past few years, farming has become more difficult. We had the supply chain crisis, and inflation drove up production costs. The Idaho Farm Bureau opposes breaching the dams because every barge carries 35 rail cars or 134 truckloads worth of wheat at about half the cost.
If the dams went away, it's been estimated it would cost the average wheat farmer in Idaho about another $1 a bushel for his wheat. Well, if you know what farmers are getting right now for their wheat, it's not above break even. So you add another $1 a bushel to that cost, it would put a lot of wheat farmers out of business.
Right now, there's a replacement of energy study, a transportation replacement study, a water supply study, and a recreation replacement study happening in Washington state as this issue continues to evolve.
I think at this point, it's not necessarily a question of if this will happen. It's a question of when it'll happen and how it'll happen.
It doesn't make any sense economically, and there's no guarantee that taking the dams out would help the salmon.
To be clear, Sean Ellis with the Idaho Farm Bureau supports salmon recovery, and Jack Hurdy with the Idaho Guides and Outfitters Association wants farmers to remain whole. There will be a chance for public comment as we move through this process, and we'll keep you updated on how to submit your thoughts. I'm your Idaho Backroads neighborhood reporter, Steve Dent, for Idaho News 6.